Yeah, so my name is Sue. I work as a UX researcher at Facebook. I attended the program 2018 to 2020, the fated year. I think the program prepared me for, I think thinking about the bigger picture about how things come together. So, I'm not, even though I work as a researcher now, I think a lot of times when I think about research questions and how I'm going to approach answering those questions and even like delivering the answers to those questions, I'm thinking about like the design stuff too. And I'm thinking about like how all these pieces come together. And I think that's really helpful for me, not only to be able to make sure that I'm answering the questions, I think in a way that's beneficial, but also for me to be able to kind of speak the language of designers. I think that's also real important to be able to communicate those things well. Good question. How has it been? Well, we were just kind of talking about this, but I think it's been kind of a rough transition, I'll admit. So not only was it kind of me transitioning from the HCI program into working, but this is also my first full-time job, like out of school. And so that in itself, I think is just like a big transition. And then to be transitioning into a workplace that's fully remote, like I've never been into the office. I've never met any of my coworkers in person. Don't know how tall they are, like don't know what kind of shoes they wear, but like I still feel like I've been able to get to know them to some extent too. But all those things coming together, I think has made it a little bit rough. But I think now that I've had some time to kind of adapt and, get used to things a little bit, I think now is when I'm starting to feel like I can actually apply the things that I'm learning in the program at like 100% as opposed to, 50% and 50% just trying to like adapt. So. Yeah, I would say, I mean, the number one thing is to don't take your time for granted. And I think when I was in the program, it's easy to kind of be thinking about like, oh, I need to do this next thing and I do need to do this next thing. And I don't want to go to this talk because it's like I have these other things on my to-do list. But you never know when it's all going to be taken away because of a global pandemic and like you won't be able to do those things in person, right? So don't take the time for granted. I think also working smart and not necessarily just working hard. Working hard is obviously important, but figure out like where the best places are to invest your time. I think there are some things like, I know for a lot of people, myself included, like the internship search can be really challenging and it feels like that's kind of a black hole of time of like, you don't know, exactly where to put your time. And so figuring out like where there are places where that there's like an absolute like reward at the end of that investment, like definitely focus your time there. And other places where it seems like maybe the rules are unclear, like maybe it's just a box that you need to tick. Work smart, not work hard. I think something for me has been a change that I've needed to kind of wrestle with is with taking on projects during the program. There's obviously a degree of uncertainty with like maybe the problem space that you've chosen, that you've been given. And it's easy to say, okay, we'll just make this assumption and say that we're going with this for these reasons. And this will help us kind of move forward and at least like do something for the sake of this assignment. I think something that I've had to adjust to within industry is that like, for one, the stakes are higher. So whenever you're making that decision, it feels like it's not just, kind of an arbitrary decision that you're making for the project that you're working on. And obviously you need to have that rationale and like reasoning for why you're making those decisions, but the stakes do feel a little bit different. And I think getting used to that, like the ambiguity in that sense is something that's really tough. And even talking to like other researchers who have much, much more experience than me, they say that that's something that they struggle with, not only just in the beginning of their career, but like still currently, even though they have more experience. So I think just talking about that and also the imposter syndrome stuff, like it's so real. I think going into the program, a lot of people feel it. I felt it myself. Coming out of the program, I felt it. I think a lot of people do as well. And I think those are all normal things. So the faster that you can kind of become a friend to those feelings, I think the better off you'll be. I think one thing that was really helpful was that I talked to my manager about this, when I had first started, because I was like, I just don't know. Like, a lot of people here have their PhDs. I don't have a PhD, but I do feel, qualified, but like, I don't have this like doctor behind my name. And one of the things that she did was just connect me with another actually an alum from the HCI program, who had, similar experiences and kind of similar struggles too when she first started. And so talking to other people who have had this experience has been really helpful, just to kind of make me feel like I'm not so much alone. And even just bringing it up, I think it's not like the most fun thing to talk about necessarily, but even just bringing it up, I think myself, I'm still even kind of surprised at how often people are like, oh yeah, I feel that too, like 100%. I think that really helps. The things that I was thinking about when I was thinking about applying to programs was like, for one, the prestige of the program. That's like not something that you can really, it's hard to ignore, right? It's like all over all of these Medium articles and like, etc. So yeah, if that's something that matters to you, then think about that. But I think more importantly, something that doesn't get talked about as much is kind of the community aspect. I think, hopefully that comes through in some of the parts of like with the podcast from the HCI program at Georgia Tech, or like, the YouTube channel and like other ways. But I think the community aspect of Georgia Tech's program is really, really strong. And for me, that was one of the best parts of the experience, is just getting to know the people in the program, feeling like I can actually ask other people for help, and that people would be receptive and willing to kind of share their advice and all of that. So think about those things, hint, hint, apply regardless. And I also think that there are other routes too, like don't just consider the HCI program. A lot of people make pivots in their career without necessarily like just going to school. So yeah, just some things to think about.